Hey there. Now that we actually have created our single-page wireframe for our application using Flash Catalyst, we're going to use that as the basis and create other pages of our application using that original one. So let's actually jump into exactly where we left off in the last video. So here I've got that same wireframe that I built last time. I got my header at the top. I've got this little kind of placeholder graphic that's representing this animation that's going to be made later. And then I have my buttons at the bottom. So if you notice at the top, we have this Pages States panel. This represents all the major pages of a Flash-based website, or what are known as states of an application for an application made using the Flex framework. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this to create all the major pages of our application. So right now the default is page 1 whenever I create a new project. So let's actually rename that to something that's more meaningful for us. So I can double click this and I can call it Welcome. You'll notice that the States panel at the top, if I press the space bar, it doesn't allow any spaces. This is because when I hand the project off to the developer, based on their language, they actually can't have spaces in these particular items. So Flash Catalyst is able to discern what is allowed and what's not, so there's successful handoff from design to develop. So we're just going to keep this as Welcome for now. So with the Welcome page created, I'm going to use this as the basis for my next page, which is going to be our Eat page. I could create a new blank state if I wanted to have a completely new look for this particular second page. But let's use this original page as a basis to accelerate how we actually design the second one. With the Welcome page selected, I can click on Duplicate State. This will actually create a copy of that state, and as you can see, it's created that after the Welcome state. So if I double click the name here, I'm going to edit this to Eat. I also have the Watch state, which is also going to be another application state for this project. So with Eat, I'm going to duplicate that, and we'll make that Watch. When you create other states, you'll notice that the Timelines panel to open is automatically going to pop up. One of the things that Flash Catalyst does for us is when we create multiple states in our application, the timelines will allow us to choreograph all the different elements of our application and see which ones are going to, say, slide from the left to the right or from the right to the left, what things are going to fade in or fade out as we go from state to state of our application. As we've built out these particular states, you'll see that all the state transitions, meaning that I can go from state A to state B, are captured in this particular panel. With 3 states, we have a total number of 6 options that we can go from A to B. In this case, we can go from Welcome to Eat, Welcome to Watch, Eat to Welcome, Eat to Watch, etc. The more states that you create, the more transition states that you're going to ultimately have inside of your panel. If you have a lot of states in your project, you can actually modify this panel a little bit so you can actually work with just the current state you're working with, or work with states that only have smooth transitions, which we'll get to later in another video. You can also pick a particular state and only see the state transitions that are based on that particular state. So now that we have created all 3 of our states here, let's actually go into the Layers panel and start modifying the things that are going to be on or off. That's how we're going to take a look at how the designs are going to modify when I go from Welcome to Eat to Watch. So in Welcome, which I have selected here, we have that opening animation. Well, the opening animation isn't necessarily going to be on the Eat or the Watch pages. So we actually want to turn them off on those pages. So let's go to Eat and select that graphical object. And inside of my Layers panel, I actually can turn that off. To turn it off, I just hide it. In this state now, that graphic is not going to display. Let's go into the Watch state and do the same thing. I select the graphic, and then I hide it. Now that particular graphic is not going to be in the Eat or the Watch states. Just to kind of preview a little bit of what we're going to do later in another video, let's reopen that Timelines panel. If you notice, when I go from Welcome to Eat, that rectangle object that we had selected and we had made invisible in the second one, you'll notice that it automatically has created a fade out for us. We're actually going to use this as well as a bunch of other types of transitions to help accelerate how we actually build a choreographed transition from state A to state B. Now, one thing that should be called out at this particular point before we get too much further is that our layers panel should always be maintained so we have realistic names for all of our objects. Sometimes this gets overlooked when you're working with a project. So we can actually double-click any one of these particular objects to rename them. So in this case, I'm going to call this placeholder animation. Layers can have spaces in them, just like any other Adobe product. It's only with the state names you can't put a space. I can also rename any of these lines. So I can say that this line is actually the one at the top. And if you click anything on the Layers panel, you'll see that it's highlighted on the stage. So I'm going to call this the header divider. I can call this other one the footer divider. Now, if I wanted to rearrange anything that's on the Layers panel, I can just click and drag to move and change the order of the things in the Layers panel. If there's a particular object that I want to freeze or have locked throughout the entire project, I also can click the lock icon that's to the right of the visibility or eye icon. So now we've been able to create 3 particular states of this application. What we're going to do in future videos is build custom components or advanced components that are going to actually populate the interaction design of the eat and the watch states.